Wuthering Heights, Chapter 19. A letter edged with black announced the day of my master's return. Isabella was dead, and he wrote to bid me get mourning for his daughter and arrange a room and other accommodations for his youthful nephew. Catherine ran wild with joy at the idea of welcoming her father back and indulged most sanguine anticipations of the innumerable excellences of her real cousin. The evening of their expected arrival came. Since early morning she had been busy ordering her own small affairs, and now attired in new black frock, poor thing, her aunt's death impressed her with no definite sorrow. She obliged me by constant worrying to walk with her down through the grounds to meet them. Linton is just 6 months younger than I am, she chattered, as we strolled leisurely over the swells and hollows of the mossy turf under shadow of the trees. How delightful it will be to have him for a playfellow. Aunt Isabella sent Papa a beautiful lock of his hair. It was lighter than mine, more flaxen and quite as fine. I have it carefully preserved in a little glass box, and I've often thought what pleasure it would be to see its owner. Oh, I am happy. And Papa, dear, dear Papa, come, Ellen, let us run. Come, run. She ran and returned and ran again many times before my sober footsteps reached the gate, and then she seated herself on the grassy bank beside the path and tried to wait patiently, but was impossible. She couldn't be still a minute. How long they are, she exclaimed. Ah, I see some dust on the road. They are coming. No. When will they be here? May we not go a little way? Half a mile, Ellen? Only just half a mile. Do say yes to that clump of birches at the turn. I refused staunchly, and at length her suspense was ended. The traveling carriage rolled in sight. Miss Cathy shrieked and stretched out her arms as soon as she caught sight of her father's face looking from the window. He descended nearly as eager as herself, and a considerable interval elapsed ere they had a thought to spare for any but themselves. While they exchanged caresses, I took a peep in to see after Linton. He was asleep in a corner, wrapped in a warm, fur-lined cloak, as if it had been winter. A pale, delicate, effeminate boy, who might have been taken for my master's younger brother, so strong was the resemblance. But there was a sickly peevishness in his aspect that Edgar Linton never had. The latter saw me looking, and having shaken hands, advised me to close the door and leave him undisturbed, for the journey had fatigued him. Cathy would fain have taken one glance, but her father told her to come on, and they walked together up the park, while I hastened before to prepare the servants. Now, darling, said Mr. Linton, addressing his daughter as they halted at the bottom of the front steps, your cousin is not so strong or so merry as you are, and he has lost his mother, remember, a very short time since. Therefore, don't expect him to play and run about with you directly, and don't harass him much by talking. Let him be quiet this evening at least, will you? Yes, yes, Papa, answered Catherine, but I do want to see him, and he hasn't looked out once. The carriage stopped, and the sleeper, being roused, was lifted to the ground by his uncle. This is your cousin, Cathy, Linton, he said, putting their little hands together. She's fond of you already, and mind you don't grieve her by crying tonight. Try to be cheerful now. The traveling is at an end, and you have nothing to do but rest and amuse yourself as you please. Let me go to bed, then, answered the boy, shrinking from Catherine's salute, and he put his finger to his eyes to remove the incipient tears. Come, come, there's a good child, I whispered, leading to him. You'll make her weep, too. See how sorry she is for you. I do not know whether it were sorrow for him, but his cousin put on as sad a countenance as himself, and returned to her father. All three entered and mounted to the library, where tea was laid ready. I proceeded to remove Linton's cap and mantle, and placed him on a chair by the table, but he was no sooner seated than he began to cry afresh. My master inquired what was the matter. I can't sit on a chair, sobbed the boy. Go to the sofa, then, and Ellen shall bring you some tea, answered his uncle patiently. He had been greatly tried during the journey, I felt convinced, by his fretful, ailing charge. At first, she sat silent, but that could not last. She had resolved to make a pet of her little cousin, as she would have him to be, and she commenced stroking his curls and kissing his cheek and offering him tea in a saucer like a baby. This pleased him, for he was not much better. He dried his eyes and lightened into a faint smile. Oh, he'll do very well, said the master to me after watching them a minute. Very well, if she can keep him. If we can keep him, Ellen. The company of a child his own age will instill new spirit into him soon, and by wishing for strength he'll gain it. Aye, if we can keep him, I mused to myself, and sore misgivings came over me that there was slight hope of that. And then I thought, however will that weakling live at Wuthering Heights between his father and Hareton? What playmates and instructors they'll be. Our doubts were presently decided, even earlier than I expected. I had just taken the children upstairs after tea was finished and seen Linton asleep. He would not suffer me to leave him till he was that case. I had come down and was standing by the table in the hall, lighting a bedroom candle for Mr. Edgar, when a maid stepped out of the kitchen and informed me that Mr. Heathcliff's servant Joseph was at the door and wished to speak with the master. I shall ask him what he wants first, I said, in considerable trepidation. A very unlikely hour to be troubling people, and at the very instant they have returned from a long journey. I don't think the master can see him. Joseph had advanced through the kitchen as I uttered these words, and now presented himself in the hall. He was donned in his Sunday garments with his most sanctimonious and sourest face, and holding his hat in one of his hands and his stick in the other, he proceeded to clean his shoes on the mat. "Good evening, Joseph," I said coldly. "What business brings you here tonight?" "It's Mr. Launton I'd mun speak to," he answered, waving me disdainfully aside. "Mr. Linton is going to bed. Unless you have something particular to say, I'm sure he won't hear it now," I continued. "You had better sit down in there and entrust your message to me." "Which is his room?" pursued the fellow, surveying the range of closed doors. I perceived he was bent on refusing my mediation, so very reluctantly I went up to the library and announced the unseasonable visitor, advising that he should be dismissed till next day. Mr. Linton had no time to empower me to do so, for he mounted close at my heels and, pushing into the apartment, planted himself at the far side of the table with his two fists clapped on the head of his stick, and began in his elevated tone as if anticipating opposition. "Heathcliff has sent me for his lad, and I mun't go back about him." Edgar Linton was silent a minute, an expression of exceeding sorrow overcast his features. He would have pitied the child on his own account, but recalling Isabella's hopes and fears and anxious wishes for her son, and her commendations of him to his care, he grieved bitterly at the prospect of yielding him up, and searched in his heart how it might be avoided. No plan offered itself. The very exhibition of any desire to keep him would have rendered the claimant more peremptory. There was nothing left but to resign him. However, he was not going to rouse him from his sleep. "Tell Mr. Heathcliff," he answered calmly, "that his son shall come to Wuthering Heights tomorrow. He is in bed and too tired to go to the distance now. You may also tell him that the mother of Linton desired him to remain under my guardianship, and at present his health is very precarious." "No," said Joseph, giving a thud with the prop of his on the floor, and assuming an authoritative air. "No, that manes now. Heathcliff makes no count of the mother, nor yo norther, but he'll have his lad, and I meant to him, so now you know." "You shall not go tonight," answered Linton decisively. "Walk downstairs at once, and repeat this to your master, what I have said. Ellen, show him down. Go." And aiding the indignant elder with a lift by the arm, he rid the room of him and closed the door. "Very well," shouted Joseph as he slowly drew off. "Tomorrow he's come histling, and thrust him out if ye dare."